Hello again, I'm Dr. Pasion-Gonzales, and this is the video lecture on Chapter 6, Memory. I've been looking forward to this chapter all semester. One, it's good nerdy fun, and second, I think it's really relevant to your academic career. You're a student, and if you can maximize your ability to remember things that are important for you, it's going to help your learning. When you learn better, you're going to do better in your classes. Everything's going to improve. This is a great example of a skill that can be built over time and does not require natural raw talent or a genius level memory. In fact, like lots of things, it just takes time and practice on the right technique. This week in your readings, be sure that you differentiate between short-term memory, working memory, and long-term memory. Today, we are going to talk about memory from the perspective of how to organize it, kind of like organizing your closet, right? So that when you store information the right way, we can retrieve it the right way. We're also going to talk about 4 specific memory techniques that you can use in your classes to remember information at home in any of your learning. And lastly, we are going to talk about some tips to improve your memory. In the first place, don't forget that memory is like a muscle that you need to exercise to improve. You might recall from our biology chapter that our physical brain structures actually change in response to practice. And this is very much the case when it comes to learning and memory. Those parts of your brain that are involved with storage and retrieval of information, they get better, they get sharper, they get refined the more that we learn. So the more you learn, the easier it gets. From a biological perspective, there are some very clear biological limits when it comes to memory. As I just mentioned with short-term memory, we can remember about 4 items of information in our head at any one time. That's it. That's a biological limit. However, since human beings have been cheating throughout history, right, there are practically no functional limits to what we can remember. And I'm going to give you an example here. They actually have memory competitions. And one of these events is a random digit competition. And how it works is you have somebody who reads to you random digits about a second apart. So it might go 7, 1, 6, 4, 9, 5, 0. And then you would have to repeat those digits in the right order. Okay? And you only get to hear the digits one time, and you get one chance to get it right. Now, the chart shows the memory champions up to the year 2015. And I want you to notice 2 things. First of all, the winners just recalled insane, unbelievable amounts of numbers. Now, how does this make sense when we can only hold 4 pieces of information in our head at any one time? It's just mind-boggling to me. Second, I want you to notice that every year the winner is remembering more and more and more items. In fact, if you look at the winner in 2015, that winner is remembering 4 or 5 times as many digits as the winner when this competition first started. Okay, so those improvements are not ability, it's not natural talent, that's an improvement in technique and practice. From the chapter, I want to make sure you're clear about the difference between short-term memory and working memory. Now, long-term memory is pretty clear-cut, right? It's information we can hold on to for a long period of time. Now, short-term memory is limited to about 4 pieces of information, and we can hold on to it for about 10 seconds or so. And if we don't do anything else with it, poof, it just fades away because we're focusing on the next thing that is on our mind. Okay, so About 4 pieces of information can last about 10 seconds. And one of the common myths that we have about memory is because I remember something now, I'll remember it later. I don't have to write it down. I don't have to do anything to store it. I know what I need to remember, it'll stick. And that's actually a myth. So that's short term memory. Working memory is what we do with all of those cognitive resources. What do we do with that information that's in short term memory? How do we consolidate that or use that in relation to information that's in long term memory? It's working memory is where we make priorities, where we plan, where we organize things, right? So remember in the biology chapter, we talked about the prefrontal cortex, the PFC, the professor. It's the working memory, all those executive functions are occurring in the prefrontal cortex. That's the professor part of our brain. Your memory is like a closet, okay? Nobody likes to organize their closet. Well, I assume nobody likes to organize their closet. Maybe you do. But keeping your memories and keeping your information organized and orderly is helpful for your memory in the same way that it is for your closet. If you're just stuffing information in your brain, hoping, trusting that you'll be able to find it later, it's actually going to be very difficult. Much like a closet, if you're orderly with what you put in, and if you can associate things and group things in meaningful ways for you, it's going to be easier to retrieve that information later. And some of these memory techniques hopefully will be related to that, and you'll be able to see that connection. Let's talk about these 4 techniques. Now, the first technique is called the Palace method, and it was first developed a couple of centuries ago by the Greeks especially when they were doing a big speech in front of the Senate, and they needed to remember important pieces of information. So if you've ever heard anybody start a talk or speech with saying, well, in the first place, let me tell you this, that, and the other, okay? That terminology, in the first place, actually refers to this Palace method. Now, how this works is you would imagine your palace, okay, your home, right? And you imagine the different rooms in your home, and what they would do and what you can do is things that you need to remember, even like, for example, items on your shopping list. You can attach or associate to specific rooms in your house. So as you imagine walking through the different rooms in your house, you're visualizing the thing that you need to remember, and it's associated to something that you're very familiar with, like your house. So let me give you an example. If you need to go to the store and you don't have your phone with you or a piece of paper and you need to remember some things, right? You might close your eyes and visualize your front door of your house, and on it you see a picture of an Easter egg to remind you that you have to get eggs. Okay? Then you might open your front door, walk into your living room, and on the couch, you might see a cow playing Xbox, sipping on a glass of milk through a straw to remind you that you have to get milk. You might walk into the kitchen, and on your counter, you see a loaf of bread, and it's opened up, and there's a couple of slices on the counter that have some peanut butter and jelly, because that's what you're going to have for lunch. So that's going to be a reminder to you that you have to get bread when you go to the store. And lastly, you're going to make your way out over to your bedroom, and you're going to go to your closet, and you're going to see on the floor 2 sticks of butter, because that's what you're going to wear as shoes when you go on your afternoon walk today. Okay? So eggs, milk, bread, butter, and you would tie them to, and you would associate them to the different rooms in your house. That's the Palace method. Next is the peg method, which involves attaching objects to numbers or letters. For example, 1 gun, 2 shoe, 3 tree, 4 door, 5 hive, 6 sticks, 7 heaven, 8 weights, and 9 red wine. Now, if you wanted to remember those same grocery items, you might tell a story where you're engaging in some target practice and you're shooting eggs. Okay, that's one gun, you're shooting eggs. Then you might notice a cow in jogging shoes. Shoes, to shoe, cow in shoes. Then you get hot and hungry, so you walk under the Wonder Bread tree, tree, and you pull off a couple of slices for lunch. Then, after a day of shooting eggs, you go home and you find that somebody has put butter all over the doorknob, the knob on your door, so that you can't twist it to get it open. 4-door butter. And that's the PEG method. Now, the next method is chunking, and all of you are familiar with this, even if you're not familiar with the term. This is simply taking large pieces of information, breaking it down into smaller, doable parts so that you can remember those items more easily. For example, in a phone number, you've got an area code, 559, right? And then you've got the prefix, 732, 734, whatever it is. And then you've got the last 4 digits, right? That's chunking down a 10-digit number into 3 manageable pieces. Or in music, it's very common when you're learning a complicated piece where you might break down a whole song into small chunks, a measure at a time even. Master that measure, put those pieces back together to be able to play the song again. The last method is chain linking, and this is particularly helpful when you need to remember items in order. You're building a chain where each link is based on the previous link. If you've ever learned a song or a rhyme to remember presidents or the states' capitals, something like that, those are all examples of chain linking. I'm going to add a link to a guy playing a song to help remember all of the presidents up until I think George W. Bush, as just an example of that. Another example in music might be Every Good Boy Does Fine. That's an acronym, Every Good Boy Does Fine, for the notes that are on the actual lines of a music staff that you're reading. E, G, B, D, F. Every Good Boy Does Fine. My guess is you have even better examples than I do, so if you do, please share them with the class, okay? Lastly, here's a few tips that I want to share with you to help improve your learning and your memory. First of all, use metaphors and stories, right? Our brains are simply wired to remember stories, images, metaphors much, much better than just dry pieces of information. So use this to your advantage. Second, attach emotions to things that you want to remember. If you recall from the biology chapter, the amygdala is the part of the brain that attaches emotion to strong memories. Use this to your advantage. Your brain is wired to remember things that have emotional value to you. So if you remember the song that reminds you of someone who you really loved or someone who you came to really hate, you'll appreciate that emotions brings up powerful memories. Use that to your advantage. In the same way, use your senses. Visualize things. Recall what things sound like, even what they smell like or taste like or feel like. Okay. Again, our brains don't have just memory for information. We can really enhance and strengthen those memories when they're multimodal, multisensory. Next, do not multitask. Focus on one thing at a time. Learn that or get that task done and then move on. It's a myth to think that our brains multitask. We can't. What happens is if we have 2 tasks we're trying to do at the same time, if we're trying to write our paper and check Twitter and Facebook or whatever, You're not multitasking. Your brain is going back and forth between those two tasks, and it's inefficient. It wastes valuable energy and resources to do that. It's much more efficient, much better if you focus on the single thing that you want to learn, master it, and then move on to the next thing. Next, whatever you're learning, make it simple. Put it in your own words so that it makes sense to you. In psychology, as with much of science, we have big words for everything. And frankly, I don't really care how much of those terms that you remember. That's not going to show me that you understand the material. When you can take a complex idea and put it into your own words so that it's simple and makes sense to you, that's real learning. And that's what I want you to focus on. Okay, so take the time, take the effort to make complicated things simple so that they make sense to you. Lastly, remember that learning is practice over time. So you're much better off reviewing material multiple times for short periods than you are trying to cram in one long period before a test. Okay, there you go. Now, you won't be surprised that your discussion board this week is going to be to practice what we just talked about. So you're going to take 10 items, anything you want, random items, things off of your grocery list, and you are going to use one of those 4 techniques to consolidate that information so that you can remember it. And the discussion board is going to be to have you pay attention to that process on the inside so that you find a good technique that works for you. As always, read the chapter, complete all of the Revel quizzes throughout the chapter, complete the Revel quiz at the end of the chapter, and then separate from that, you have a Canvas exam that you're going to have to complete all of those things by Sunday night. Your discussion board, which we just talked about, is also going to be due on Sunday night as well. My office hours are Tuesday nights from 7 to 8 o'clock, and you should have the Zoom link by now. If you have any questions, email me, but don't wait till the last minute, okay? All right. Guys, enjoy this week, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.